Here is an example of the dilemma that the Republicans have here. And it actually is provided to us by Fox, or the Fox 5. Is that what they call it? The 5. They now have a new, liberal punching bag on that show. Her name is Jennifer Tarlov. I don't know much about her, frankly. She is replacing Juan Williams. I don't know if she's actually permanently replaced him or just today. And she, I don't know if this was her intent, shows the dilemma that Republicans have. You already have a gang of 10 that is signed off on an bipartisan infrastructure bill. Mitch McConnell doesn't know what to do. He's saying if it's untethered from the reconciliation bill, then he will allow it to go forward. But the Republicans have no substantive argument against this bipartisan bill. Look how lame their talking points are against this. Tarlov is going to cite the tragedy that has happened in Miami Beach, or excuse me, not Miami Beach, in Florida, and on the coast of Florida. We have dozens, over 100 people, more than likely dead, in this collapse of a building that I am sure was a function of faulty building practices. But also, I would imagine, a function, at least in part, of increased water through the very porous ground that things on the coast of Florida are built on, rising ocean levels. In other words, climate change.
My understanding was it was built on a reclaimed wetland or swamp.
And those reclaimed wetlands are becoming more and more wet because of rising sea levels, particularly in southern Florida and throughout the coastal Florida. And so there are multiple things that are working. I don't know if we'll ever know it was 75% this, 25% that. But so with that understanding, listen to the talking points that the 5 have developed against the idea of infrastructure.
And rescue package, this is a core component of the American Jobs Act. And Mitch McConnell said over the weekend, if the reconciliation bill isn't necessarily tied to this, Republicans should be for this. Everybody wants infrastructure, and certainly Republicans that are in states with crumbling bridges. We have a crumbling building in Florida now that,
Unrelated. It's a private building.
I understand. I'm just saying there are disasters all around.
But it's not part of infrastructure plan.
Okay. I'm not saying it's going to fund Surfside. I'm just saying that people are surrounded by things that are broken, and Republicans and Democrats want to fix them.
You know what else is crumbling? Your ivory tower.
Really?
Crashing down.
My degrees are in great shape right now.
Money.
But putting aside the private versus public infrastructure issue, Joe Biden has gotten what he wanted. And I think we all remember when the squad was like, oh, I don't know if we're going to vote for Nancy Pelosi as speaker. And then they all lined up and they voted for Nancy Pelosi as speaker. That is true. They fall in line. And Bernie Sanders has also fallen in line throughout his entire 50-year curmudgeonly career. So
now, let's just reserve the last sort of points that she has to make to sort of position herself appropriately on the Fox 5. But the idea that having a building collapse doesn't remind people the potential dangers that exist if we do not upgrade our infrastructure. That's the low-hanging fruit of her comment. It is just creating a political context where it's not hard to say, like, hey, it's important to invest in these things. It's important to go in and check the structural soundness of our infrastructure. Never mind the fact that we're talking about addressing climate change in this, which undoubtedly impacted Surfside and undoubtedly impacts a myriad of other things. We have roads buckling in the Northwest. We have scores of people dying in the Pacific Northwest because of the heat. We have droughts. We have shortages of crops. We have superstorms. I mean, all of this, it seems quite obvious, even to people who are just maybe you got to be number 6 or 7 on the 5 to really get that. But the idea that they're going to say, well, egghead, I think people who don't have advanced degrees understand the implications of poor infrastructure.
This feels like the future. Like this is going to be their reaction to everything. We're going to see images of things collapsing because of climate change, or like, you know, forest fires caused by climate change. It's going to be like, oh, you egghead.
We are in a very bizarre moment where the right has always deployed the culture war as a mechanism to fight against policies. But now they're not even doing that. Right? They're not even confronting the idea of the infrastructure bill there. They're just going on like, we're going to wage our culture war, and fine, if you want to pursue the policies, we're going to concede on that on some level. There is no policy argument from the right now. It is almost exclusively culture war stuff, and they will deploy it at every moment. There used to be a time where the response would be, we can't spend that much. We can't, and you know, they would all be lies. The debt is exploding. The deficit's exploding. There would be some policy response. And now it's just, look at you egghead. I mean, the point she was making was not that sophisticated, that it warranted, like, you gotta really feed this to people. It's not enough to cite the building that just collapsed 3 days ago and killed 100 people.
Like maybe we should do something about our private infrastructure too.
Yes. Or maybe what we need is more regulation so that a building that gets cited in 2018, 3 years later hasn't done anything about it, cannot continue to function in that way until it collapses. And then, of course, she goes on in the end to say that they all fell in line. Well, I don't think that there was actually a real movement to not vote for Pelosi for speakership, or to the extent that there was. Remember PAYGO? The diminishment of PAYGO as a principle of operation for the House. Well, we're about to see a $5 or $6 trillion worth of potentially of spending that have allowed that to go through without the words PAYGO even being sort of brought up by the Democrats in the House. And Bernie Sanders was responsible for something, let's say, the ACA, for community medical centers that are a huge linchpin of the success, to the extent that there is success with the ACA. Not so great in keeping prices down on insurance, but very good in terms of its Medicaid expansion, and it's providing for filling in some of the gaps. The best parts of the ACA were the single payer qualities of it that existed for, sadly, only a limited amount of people. But there it is. The five presenting us today a good, inadvertent illustration of what's going on in Congress in many respects. It's really just like even the lawmakers, the Republican lawmakers, are just deploying the culture war. They're doing push-ups. They're talking about Q. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I was just finishing my lunch. I ordered the Crowder. It was really good. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and to hit the like button. Thank you. Can't do it without you.